Alright, hey guys, welcome back to my channel, and today I'm really excited because we are going to be talking about my favorite race that is available to us as players in Dungeons & Dragons, and that is the Genasi Race. So, let me get into this. The Genasi are one of the 3 core plain-touched races that are available to us as players in Dungeons & Dragons. The other 2 include Aasimars and Tieflings, but the Genasi were brought to us in the Elemental Evil Player's Companion for 5th edition back in 2015. Alright, so what Genasis are? They are the offsprings of mortals and genies. However, this can come in a variety of ways. So the first and most common and most obvious way that this is going to happen is a mortal and a genie just hook up, have a child, and it's a Genasi. But there are a couple of other ways that this can happen. One, a mortal and a genie can hook up, and then that sort of heritage will stay dormant in the bloodline for a couple of generations before coming out a few generations down the road and producing a Genasi offspring later. Or 2 Genasi parents can come together and produce a Genasi child. Or there can be some sort of event in the world that expunges elemental energy onto the people and affecting them, which in turns makes them have Genasi children. But Genasis are an elemental-based race, which I think is why I enjoy them so much, because I have a thing for elements, elemental energies, in the real world and in Dungeons & Dragons. That halfling mother that fights with the rolling pin and the cutting board that I talked about in my last video, she's actually half Earth Genasi. And when I was introducing her to the group, one of the players that I've been playing with for a year, he kind of laughed and was like, you always find a way to bring elemental energies into your characters, which is very true. It's just my scene. It's what I do. I love a good element. So like I was talking about with Genasis being the offspring of mortals and genies. Genies rarely have any sort of contact with their children. They don't care about them. They're seen as either mistakes or just lesser beings than the genie itself. And because of that, the genie will rarely have any sort of contact with the Genasi. And Genasis themselves rarely have their own communities because they are a very rare race. And that's something that you have to consider when you're making a Genasi character, or if you have a Genasi in your campaign, is everybody's going to react to them differently. So in some societies and communities, having a Genasi born into it could be seen as a curse or a bad omen, and they can be exiled from the community, or even an attempt at their life could be made. Or with my first character ever was named Flux Leclaire, and he was an Air Genasi wizard. And I still play him, I still love him, he's my baby. And he was born into a community that was already very in touch with the elements, and because of that, his birth was seen as a good omen, and he was able to be raised in that community without many issues. And he spent his life there. However, the majority of Genasis are met with ridicule and aggression, and so every Genasi deals with this differently. Some choose to move to bigger cities where they can try to blend in with the crowds. Some will go out into the wilderness and isolate themselves and just get away from everyone. And some will even move to the elemental plane that their parent is from. So an Air Genasi might get fed up with being ridiculed, and he might move to the elemental plane of air, or a Fire Genasi might move to the city of Brass in the fire plane. That's just something that you have to consider when you're writing your character, and his backstory is how did people react to your Genasi, and then how did they react in turn to that. They also tend to take on the names of the culture that they are born in. So a Genasi born to humans might just be Matthew. But many Genasis, when they get older, they choose to take on names that represent their heritage. So my Flux is an Air Genasi. Flame, Wave, Onx, these are very common names for Genasis. My Earth Genasi Barbarian is named Ruby. and things like that. It's very simple, really. But now for the stats for Genasis. So I think Genasis are amazing because each of the sub-races is like really good for a different class, but their general stats are just really good for almost any class, really. First off, your Constitution score increases by 2, which is very important because I cannot think of a class that does not rely on Constitution to an extent, because Constitution, first off, controls your health. So it's very important for like fighters and barbarians and tanky characters to have high health. So having a higher Constitution score can really help that. For magic users, having a higher Constitution score helps them keep their concentration on spells after they take damage. It's a very well-rounded stat, essentially, and it's very, like, this Constitution increase can be very helpful. The languages that you know are Common and Primordial, and Primordial is a very guttural language that's spoken by, like, genies and elementals. Also, Genasis mature at about the same rate as humans, however they live slightly longer, living to be about 120 years. Genasis tend towards a neutral alignment. This is due to them being very independent and self-reliant, and a lot of that does come from the ridicule that they face. They have to learn to depend on themselves. And then the size and the speed is as varied as their mortal parents. So the base size and the base speed for Genasis, your size medium and your speed is 30 feet. However, I like to take, like with my halfling Earth Genasi that I'm going to keep referring to because I love her. Even though the base speed for Genasis are 30 feet and the base size is a medium, I gave her the size and the speed of a halfling because she's the size of a halfling. Genasis tend to take on traits of their mortal parents, even while they have all these like crazy things going on with their physical appearance from their Genasi heritage. So like a Genasi with an elven parent might have like long pointed ears and be very slim and tall. A dwarven Genasi might be very short and stout. A halfling Genasi is very tiny with like small hands. A gnome Genasi might have like these huge eyes set into their head. It's all just dependent on how you want to make their character. It's very, 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 very varied. Like you can do anything you want with like a physical appearance with the Genasi, which is what I love about it. Now, let's get into sub-races. The first sub-race that I'm going to be talking about is the Air Genasi, which was my first character ever. The first character I ever played in Dungeons & Dragons was an Air Genasi. But Air Genasis are descendants of Djinn, which are the air genies, essentially, obviously. And their moods can change like the weather. They go from calm to very excited to angry to just very quickly. However, their moods do change like the weather. So these very intense emotions that they like go into very quickly, sometimes it ends like that as well. They're just sort of all over the place. Their moods are constantly changing with, and another thing that I love about them is they have like a constant breeze on them. So they have like that constant Beyonce fan going on with their hair. They tend to have like light blue skin to white skin. Their hair can be anywhere from like light blue to gray to white. They can look almost like an albino. Some Air Genasis have like crystals growing over their skin. It's just really however you want to design them. But for their stats, Air Genasis get a dexterity score increase of 1. So this is Air Genasis are going to be good for playing like rogues or monks or rangers, like that sort of thing. You also get something called unending breath, which means that you can hold your breath indefinitely as long as you are not incapacitated, which while can be extremely situational, it can also be extremely helpful in those situations. Like if you have to get something off the bottom of a lake, you can just swim down and get it. If you have to like be in a room with nauseous gas, you can just hold your breath while you're in there. I am a huge fan of situational things just because I love getting into a really niche like situation and being like, oh, I have this potion that I bought like 6 months ago just in case this happened. I have a habit of going to potion stores in games and just being like, what's your most situational potion? And give it to me. You also, as an Air Genasi, get something called Mingle with the Wind, which means that you can cast Levitate once per day with this trait. It's just a little, like, again, it's sort of situational. My wizard would use it to, like, levitate enemies in the air, so they couldn't, like, move around very often. They couldn't move around, like, at all. That was just his thing. Now for the Earth Genasis, which like I said, I have that half halfling, half Earth Genasis. But Earth Genasis are descendants of the Deo, which are, like, these greedy and sort of cruel genies, more so than other ones. However, that does not mean that you are evil. Earth Genasis tend to be very calm and very patient, and they think things through. They're hardy. They make for really good soldiers because they're very, like, thoughtful in their actions. Earth Genasis are very varied in their physical appearance too. You can have anything from, like, just green skin and, like, this sort of long mossy hair, or you could have, like, brown or gray skin that looks like a rock. You can have, like, a, like, deep, dark, glassy black skin that looks like obsidian. Some Earth Genasis have, like, wherever they go, like, dust follows behind them. They just, like, falls off of them. You can have, like, metallic. You can look metallic, like some sort of gemstone. Again, it's just very varied. Like, my Earth Genasi barbarian, she has, like, this deep, dark black skin that's shiny like obsidian, and when she gets cut, it looks like there's magma in her body. And her eyes look almost like they're just rubies inset into her face. It's as varied as you want to make it. But for their stats, Earth Genasis get a strength score increase of 1, which this combined with that constitution increase of 2 can make for a very good barbarian or fighter or some sort of melee fighter. These are going to be like your tanks. They're really good for that sort of thing. You also get something called Earth Walk, which means that you can pass over difficult terrain as long as it's made of earth that without expending extra movement, which, you know, is, again, it's situational, but it's super handy when it does come up. You have Merge with Stone, which means that you can cast Pass Without a Trace once per long rest with this. And like I said earlier, with Earth Genasis making really good fighters and, like, barbarians, if you happen to be a character that wears heavy armor and you're going to get that, like, disadvantage on stealth checks with that heavy armor, having Pass Without a Trace can be so helpful when you have disadvantage on stealth checks. Like, Pass Without a Trace has saved my group, all of my groups, on multiple occasions, and it's just a handy thing to have in your back pocket. Alright, now for the Fire Genasis, which these are fun. Fire Genasis are descendants of the Ifriti, which are the fire genies that inhabit the elemental plane of fire, obviously. Fire Genasis tend to be very impatient, and they're very prone to, like, snap judgments without really thinking about anything. And also, they're very proud. Most Genasis, because of their unusual appearance and how much ridicule that they can face in the world, they almost try to hide their appearance a little bit. They don't want many people to really look at them, and they don't want to have to deal with the harassment that comes along with being a Genasi. However, Fire Genasis tend to, like, exalt in their appearance. They love the fact that they look differently. They make for, like, very good performers and stuff. Fire Genasis' physical appearances can be very varied as well. A lot of them have red skin or, like, pink skin, and some of the more exotic Fire Genasis have literal flames for hair. For the stats for the Fire Genasi, you get an intelligence increase of 1. So again, combined with that constitution increase, Fire Genasis can be very, very good, like, like wizards. You also get Dark Vision as a Fire Genasi, but this dark vision is a little bit different. So in most races, when you have dark vision, when you're looking at something in the dark, everything appears in shades of, like, black and white. With Fire Genasis, with your dark vision, when you're looking in the dark, everything appears in a shade of red. It doesn't really have any effect on the game. It's just a fun little flavor thing that I think is super interesting. You also are resistant to fire damage as a Fire Genasi, which, Lord, that's helpful sometimes, especially when you're fighting dragons at higher levels. That can be so helpful. And you also have a trait called Reach, Reach to the Blaze, which means that you know the Produce Flame cantrip at first level, and you can cast that at will, and you also know when you reach 3rd level, you learn the Burning Hands spell, which you can cast 1 per long rest, which is just, again, it's just a little situational thing that can be handy. Doesn't really have too much of an impact on the game. And last but not least, we have the Water Genasi. So Water Genasi are the only Genasi that I have myself not played yet, but when I make my druid, it's definitely going to be a Water Genasi that's like sort of like a guardian of some sort of spring or something. I'm playing her almost like a water nymph, essentially. But Water Genasis are descendants of water elementals. Anything from Marids, which are water genies, or even Tritons can have Water Genasi children. Water Genasis are the most independent and self-reliant of all the Genasis. They're very prone to, like, as soon as they're able to, they run off by themselves to go on an adventure. They run off by themselves to explore the world. They're very, very focused on themselves and knowing that they can only rely on themselves, especially in the material plane. Physically wise, Water Genasis always look like they just took a shower, essentially. They have like, their hair always looks like they just got out of the shower. They have like water droplets all over their skin. Their skin can be anywhere from blue to green to just everything. And with Water Genasis, you get a wisdom score increase of 1, which makes these very good for like clerics or druids, things of that nature. You also get resistance to acid damage as a Water Genasi, which, like the resistance to fire damage, can be so helpful sometimes. You count as amphibious as a Water Genasi, so you can breathe air and water, which, again, while super situational, can be super handy. You get a swimming speed of 30 feet, which, you know, movement's always fun. And also, you get Call to the Wave, which is another trait that the Water Genasis get, which means you get the Shape Water cantrip at 1st level, and at 3rd level, you get access to the spell Create or Destroy Water, which you can cast once per long rest with this. Alright guys, that was it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope that gave you a little bit of a better understanding of what the Genasis are as a race. Like normal, feel free to like and subscribe. I'm going to be making a new video soon. I think I'm going to continue down races for a little while before starting into classes, but I might do a class video, just, you know, mix it up. But yeah, that's it for today's video. Have a good day, guys, and I hope to see you next time.